Welcome to my domain, where I've within a 5-mile radius monopolized all the bit. Today's topic: sleeping teenagers. Are they getting enough? Find out in a bit. And you know, I have to give my research question, but I think it's better with a bit of an intro, something of an introduction, something that can give context to the entire situation here. In society today, a very typical conversation between parents and teenagers when it comes to sleep has emerged. You know, Jimmy, me and your mother, we've been thinking a bit, and we feel like 9 p.m. is the appropriate time for you to go to bed, and as it currently is 8:50, I feel like maybe you should, head to bed, perhaps, please. And matter of fact, that what is wrong? And you know, one can academically question whether or not this is a coincidence. Is this something that has formed over the course of hundreds of years? Or is this something that has just emerged because of, I don't know, maybe the internet, something like that, right? Something that has happened within the last 20, 30 years that's just made teenagers like this, lazy. Teenagers don't really want to go to bed early and they want to stay up late and, drink energy drinks and be like rebels, basically. Why are they like this? Why is this such a phenomenon, such a stereotype? And that leads me to my research question. Are teenagers more prone to develop depression and or health issues because of the way society is set up? I didn't read that. Now I can't just say that and fully expect you to get what I mean. Therefore I'm gonna further elaborate my points here and kind of be, polite about it. Show some respect to my listeners and actually explain my points and what I mean by that sentence. Now what I mean by the way that society is set up is simply, society is set up in a way that you have to, be a bit of an early bird, be a bit of a rise and shine kind of person, right? Now teenagers stereotypically, like I said, aren't like that. They aren't the kind of people that go, oh, it's such a great day, time to rise and shine. They lay around, they like to watch Netflix maybe, and overall they like to, lay in bed, kind of get some sleep, but overall stay up late as well. They sleep in, they hate waking up early, therefore they hate school and other responsibility-filled stuff that is kind of like early bird activity. And to many people it seems like a choice, it seems like, to parents they're just being lazy, they're just being teenagers, they're just filling out the typical stereotype. And yeah, maybe to some extent that is true, but I think that there is more to it than that. I simply think that society is against them, that society is kind of set up in a way that, they're not really getting the kind of benefits that they need and the kind of advantages that they need. Society is set up against them. But contrary to popular belief, these teens aren't lazy, because there is a very sound explanation for it. But first of all, the parents that call them lazy have forgotten the fact that they behave the exact same way themselves. Because this isn't a new phenomenon, this is something that evolution has done throughout the ages for mankind to actually survive, thrive, and overall overcome certain obstacles. So no, this isn't just me going, I like to sleep in, shut up mom. This is because science, because it actually is. There's a scientific explanation for it, and because I'm a man of science, I'm going to deduct that in my little video here today. Now there are two notable ways that we feel sleepy deepy, time for bed. And I'll get into some other ways later on, but these are the two most crucial for us to actually, fall asleep and overall feel that we need sleep right now and overall feel that, it's time for bed. It's something called the circadian rhythm and something called a very familiar name, melatonin. They're both kind of governed by something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Try saying that fast 5 times. And it's just basically a fancy word of going, or your biological clock, your kind of 24-hour schedule within your own head. But first let me explain what those two terms actually mean. The circadian rhythm is simply your kind of schedule within your own head in terms of when you're awake and when you should fall asleep. It goes up and down compared to when you should, stay awake, when you should fall asleep. The other, melatonin, is simply whether or not you can feel tired or not. It builds up from the start when you wake up until, well, you go to bed. It's kind of like the starting pistol of whether or not you can fall asleep. When melatonin has risen to a certain point, you can actually feel tired. Now these two, contrary to popular belief, aren't working together. They're like separate unities that do their own stuff. When they overlap, when the circadian rhythm is set up in a way that you are, at the end of the day, you should feel well tired, and melatonin has risen to a certain point where, oh, it's time for bed, it's nighttime, you feel tired and then you go to bed. Now the circadian rhythm varies throughout different people. There's a reason for that, which I'll get into later on, but overall the most specific thing to note, the most important thing to note, is that it varies throughout ages. When you're a newborn, your kind of circadian rhythm and how often you fall asleep and how much sleep you actually need is very different compared to when you're an adult. Also, the kind of sleep quality you need, the kind of different non-REM and REM sleep you need is very different compared to when you're an adult. And also, your circadian rhythm and melatonin and all that varies throughout your life until you're an adult. Even past that point, when you're getting into your senior years and stuff, your sleep will differ, and well, that is why such diseases like Alzheimer's and stuff like that develop, because old people don't get enough sleep. There's research now conducted which you can predict very early on whether or not an old person will develop diseases like I mentioned, based on their kind of quality of sleep and the amount of sleep they get. But that is very off topic. I didn't plan on including that. But now I have to include the research for it. Okay, but actually something important about this, something to actually note about like the differences in terms of circadian rhythms and when you fall asleep in teenagers compared to adults. Teenagers, when they go into their teen years, their circadian rhythm is kind of shoved past their parents' circadian rhythm. So they will want to stay up later, they will have the need, they literally, scientifically, biologically can't fall asleep. For them to fall asleep at 9 PM, like I did in my little sketch earlier, is like you going to yourself, oh, you gotta go to bed at 6 PM today. It's physically impossible for them to feel tired at that point. That is why they need to stay awake for such a long time. Now, why would that be a thing? Why would it be a thing that the kids of parents need to stay up longer than the actual parents? Well, evolutionary, like I mentioned before, that is a very important thing that happens in teenagers when they develop. The reason is that when you go from a kid to an adult, when you go from a child to, adolescent and then going into your adulthood years, you need to, act on your own at some point. The reason that teenagers stay past their parents' bedtime, the reason that they don't feel tired when their parents do, is because evolution has made it so that they have like a little time frame of a couple of hours to act independently, where their parents are asleep and they aren't, and they need to act out on their own. That is why they don't feel tired when their parents do. That is why every teen is lazy compared to adults. That is why every teen goes to bed later than adults. You know, this actually explains the funny stereotype, the fact that teenagers are lazy and sleepy and they hate early bird activities. That is why, because they biologically cannot feel tired, and they biologically, because they went to bed later, they need to sleep in. But is it really just a funny stereotype? Isn't this something completely detrimental to our society, and especially our teenagers? Because you are prone to mental conditions such as depression and anxiety, and physical conditions such as cancer and overall strokes. You will function worse when it comes to motor skills, memory, which is heavily important for like school and stuff like that. There are full studies on how important sleep is for your memory. When you sleep, your short-term memory storage gets taken into the long-term. This is just me kind of taking away the fancy science names and putting them into like layman's terms. Because you sleep, your short-term memory goes into your long-term. When that happens, the memory is solidified. This is very important for school. And when your quality of sleep is bad, that function is heavily affected. You're more prone to develop diabetes if you sleep less, because like lack of sleep spikes certain hormones in your brain that one make you feel hungry, but also they kind of reduce the hormones that make you feel full, make you feel satisfied in terms of hunger. So you will be more hungry and you are more prone to eat stuff that are rich in carbohydrates and fast kind of nutrition like that, not in terms of protein. And you will snack on stuff like candy, chips. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter, you can truly find this, well, relatable. The fact that you are more prone to be hungry, and especially hungry on food that isn't really that good for you. So it does really make sense that you are prone to diabetes if you sleep bad. And for the teenagers that sleep bad, if you literally sleep less than 7 hours for 10 days straight, you operate in terms of motor skills, in terms of memory, in terms of overall functioning as if you had pulled an all-nighter. And for some people, the circadian rhythm stays at this kind of night owl mode. This kind of go to bed late, wake up late modus. The reason is because of evolution again. When we were in tribes, it was very important to, well, have kind of guards around all time. So because of that evolutionary, some people in groups would sleep earlier and then some people would sleep later. So the amount of time where the tribe was overall unguarded was less compared to if everyone slept at the same time. That is why some people will have an earlier circadian rhythm and some people will have a later circadian rhythm. And that is why, like, the stereotypes of, oh, the early bird and the night owl is an actual thing. It's scientifically an actual thing. Up until now, up until we've found this kind of research and these kind of scientific findings, we thought that, oh, like the night owls, the guys that go to bed late and wake up late, they're just lazy. They just need to get their stuff together, kind of take some responsibility, right? Why are they going to bed so late? They literally can't feel sleepy and overall feel tired earlier in the day, and they have a need to go to bed late. So society has just said, oh, these people are just lazy, we should just have school hours early, work hours early, and everything in society is based on the early bird. That is the people that are responsibility filled and overall take responsibility over their own life, therefore they deserve better. They aren't lazy, they are actually taking some action in their life. But they are just biologically that way. It's just their genetics. It's not something that you have leverage over. And the fact that teenagers now are sleep deprived because of this fact just increases the problem, because now they seek out the caffeine to solve their problems. Now there is something else that contributes to sleep pressure, which is something called adenosine. Adenosine is simply something that builds up throughout the day. Now when you intake caffeine just blocks out the receptors that can receive adenosine. So what happens is that when you take caffeine, your adenosine just fades away. You can't feel tired at all. So instead of the graph going upwards like this, it'll just go up, and then when you take caffeine, it'll dip completely, and then when the caffeine fades away, it rises up again instantaneously, and that's why you have something called caffeine crash, but that is very off topic. The kind of half-life for caffeine is very long. Half-life is simply like scientifically going, oh, the time it takes for a compound to halfen inside your body. The time it takes for caffeine to be at 50% in your body is about 5 to 7 hours. So when teenagers take caffeine during the school days, they will most likely feel that when they try to go to sleep. But most teenagers don't do that, or they do, but they also intake caffeine later in the day, which just worsens the problems even more. 50% of caffeine is well enough to keep you well awake, but like 100% is, well, obviously more. That will just make the effect last longer. And even with stuff like decaf coffee, there is still some amounts of caffeine in it. There's caffeine in pills that are supposed to reduce pain. There's caffeine in stuff like dark chocolate, ice cream. There's caffeine everywhere and people don't know it. Adults don't know about the dangers and overall whereabouts of caffeine, so obviously teenagers don't as well. Now with that in mind, plus the extra like sleep problems that teenagers have, of course they struggle with stuff like mental health, more so now than ever, because we have the solution. This is research that has been done, yet no one does anything about it. They just shove the problem more or less under a rug and then just go on with their day. Because let's say you're genetically gifted, let's say it takes 5 hours, which is like the minimal time it takes for caffeine to halfen. You would intake caffeine at around 7:30 p.m, right? Around dinner, you know, a nice cup of coffee, you're an adult, you can enjoy yourself once in a while. That cup of coffee would be halfened by 1:30 p.m. And that is well enough to keep you awake. Now imagine the amounts of caffeine teenagers take nowadays. Like, that's all you hear about in the news. Oh, teenagers take too much caffeine, oh, energy drinks for teenagers, it's bad. Of course it's bad. It's bad for everyone. Caffeine isn't just like a health supplement or something that is like a food group or something. It's a stimulant, something that keeps you awake, something very similar to a drug. It should be a debate whether or not caffeine is allowed for adults, but especially, like, it shouldn't be a debate whether or not caffeine is allowed for kids, and especially teenagers that have these kind of sleep problems. It shouldn't be allowed. Like, yeah, the teenagers and the cool parents go, oh, why are you being so party pooper? Why do you want these kids to suffer? They are suffering because of this. Like, it's tough love. Because caffeine is addictive, so of course these people go, oh, you can't take away my caffeine, don't take away my coffee, come on man. Because they're addicted, right? You know, one could ponder what possibly could happen when you not only have to be sleep deprived to go to school, do something you don't want to do, but also spike your cortisol because, oh, you know, exams and, you know, oh, these tests and that, and oh, I gotta get to the bus, and oh, I gotta remember to wake up early, so I gotta eat breakfast and actually feel well, but I'm gonna be a bit sleep deprived anyway. So, you know, one could possibly speculate that there might be some depression, and isn't that enough to cause depression alone? And not, if you just factor the fact that, oh, they have to spike their cortisol, they have to do something they don't want to do, and overall feel shit, and overall feel bad when they do it. Isn't that enough to cause depression by itself? But, you know, factoring in the fact that you have bad sleep, that you don't get enough sleep, and after 10 days you operate at the same level you would if you had pulled an all-nighter. You know, these teenagers, yeah, of course they're prone to develop depression and overall develop health issues. Like, yeah, it's very unlikely that they'll develop cancer, but diabetes certainly, because like there's an obesity pandemic, and in the last 20 to 30 years there's been more and more reports of people that seem healthy developing stuff that is related to obesity, stuff like diabetes. And why is that? Well, because they're eating sugar and all those stuff that is unhealthy. And one could possibly link the two together and say, oh, because of sleep, because they spike their hormones that will make them feel not only hungry but also less satisfied, less full, and also make them crave stuff that is high in sugar and high in carbohydrates. Yeah, maybe that is the reason, but there's also like a lot of other factors to put into place, but it could very possibly be a contributing factor. And because of the way exams and school stuff is set up, there are a lot of teenagers and overall students pulling all-nighters. And this does not only do more harm than good, but it doesn't affect memory at all. When you pull an all-nighter, when you don't sleep in between learning something and then trying to, well, effectively apply it to something, when it comes to like memory, you won't remember anything. And like I said, because of your short-term memory going into your long-term memory when you have proper sleep. There's so much research done on this, the fact that you will have a bad memory if you don't sleep enough, and especially the fact that your memory will suffer and not be anything better if you put more work into actually trying to remember something but don't sleep. There is an abundance of research showing that sleep improves memory. If you just sleep a little bit, like a power nap will literally fix your memory. It will solidify what you have just learned. People like Thomas Edison, yeah, sure, he supposedly didn't sleep more than 5 hours or something like that, but he did have a technique for literally coming up with good ideas. He would sit in a stool and he'd have like 2 balls in his hand and something of a pot, a metal pot or something beneath where the balls would drop if he loosened his hand. When he entered something called REM sleep, which is when you dream, your body will kind of paralyze itself and then your muscles will loosen up, because when you're dreaming you're moving, and if you were to move when you were dreaming back in the days when you would like sleep in a tree or beside a hill, you would be kicked out of the evolutionary race pretty fast. So because of that, your body is paralyzed when you go into REM sleep, and when that happened, he will lose the balls and then wake up with a new idea. But Alex, this is just the way society is set up. Isn't it best to prepare them for what is to come and not just let them live in this little fantasy world? Well, yeah, but first of all, like I said, society is set up in a way that these kind of night owl people will suffer because of it. But also, isn't it better to just do so gradually and not just, oh, you will have to wake up early for the rest of your life? Because it starts like when they're kids, when they're little kids, and yeah, they don't suffer from that yet. But at that age, they will have the necessity for more sleep anyway. Wouldn't it be better to then just start at that age and gradually increase the time when they would have to wake up? Because yeah, like realistically, you can't just go, oh, just wake up late, because you know, in teenage years they will have to wake up late anyway. So it's not, we can't prepare them at all for like the work and the stuff that we'll have to do later on. But wouldn't it be better, like I said, to do so gradually, to just slightly increase the time they would have to wake up to an earlier and earlier time? Sure, there will always be outliers, there will always be some people that won't benefit from that and some people that will suffer because of it. Isn't it better to just help out some than none? But I don't know, like the fact that teenagers have suffered for such a long time because of this like funny stereotype that we now scientifically know is because, well, they actually suffer. They suffer from an actual lack of sleep, and they are biologically prone to do so because of the way society is set up, like my research question says. So maybe it's not that small, but maybe a big reform where children and teenagers gradually increase the time that they have to wake up isn't that bad. Like increasing in terms of, oh, you can wake up at 12 and then you have to wake up at 11 and then 10, right? Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe it will actually be beneficial, but I don't think that the way society is set up currently is good. Because like, yeah, it seems unrealistic, yeah, it seems like a dumb idea, right? But the way things in society were set up 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago is laughed upon today. Like the way we behaved 100 years ago is hilarious to us. So maybe this is something that seems dumb right now, but is actually very, very beneficial. The fact that we are letting teenagers and kids suffer because we don't really want to do anything about it is hilarious to us 100 years in the future. Because now that we have knowledge on what a lack of sleep does to our body and our overall mental health, should we do something about it? Especially the fact that we have complex MRI scans and have had so for the last 20 years on what happens to the brain when we don't have enough sleep. Isn't the way society is set up kinda making teenagers suffer for no reason? Because we've known about this for a long time. Like I said, we have complex MRI scans of the brain now. We've had so for 20 years. We've known what a lack of sleep does to the brain for 20 years. So why not just have a small gradual increase in how early our teenagers and kids have to wake up for school? Because then the change would be noticeable, and then like the transition between teenagehood and adulthood wouldn't be so drastic, wouldn't be, you have to wake up at 6 a.m. every single day for the rest of your life now. It would be gradual, right? It wouldn't be, oh, you're going to suffer because you biologically can't, well, fall asleep early. Because that would be unnoticeable. If you had that solution taken into place, it would be unnoticeable. But also it would keep our youth healthy in terms of physical health and overall mental health. It's a very complicated problem, there's no doubt about that, and the way you can actually solve it will have to be very complex. I'm not saying that, oh, my solution to this problem is the way to go, but I think it's something. I think it's at least an idea, and I think that's the right step in the right direction. Even though it's a complex problem, it's still a problem. It needs to be solved. Because now we know about it. We know about the problem we didn't before. Before it was just a funny stereotype, now it's an actual problem we have to solve. Because even this is something that many go through and many have gone through. Why just let it go on? Why let these kids suffer? Why let these teenagers suffer? Because we don't really want to deal with this complex problem. And while the problem is very complex and there can be many solutions to it, the fact that teenagers are more prone to develop health issues and depression and mental illnesses is very, well, actual. It's very real. What song was I going to play again? Oh yeah, Kissed by a